Admiral Quan Deho stood on the bridge of his ship, watching the stars through the big window. He had been in space for 20 years, but the beauty of it never got old. The quiet hum of the engines made him feel calm. His ship, the Soul's Pride, was one of the best in the human fleet. Today felt different, though. Something was coming. Captain Lee Boram walked up to him with a worried look on her face. She held a datapad in her hands and kept looking at it like it might bite her. Lee had worked with Quan for 5 years. She was smart, maybe smarter than him, and she never looked worried unless something was really wrong. "Admiral, we got a message," she said. Her voice was quiet, but Quan could hear the stress in it. "It's from something called the Vorthak Empire. They want to talk to you." Quan turned to look at her. The Vorthak Empire was new to him. Humans had been in space for almost 100 years now, but they mostly kept to themselves. They had built colonies on 12 worlds and traded with a few alien species. Most aliens were friendly enough, though some were strange. But an empire? That sounded like trouble. "Put it on the main screen," Quan said. The screen lit up with the face of something that looked like a cross between a lizard and a bird. Its skin was dark green with patterns that moved like waves. Its eyes were yellow and cold. When it spoke, its voice sounded like metal scraping on stone. "I am Overlord Thextar of the mighty Vorthak Empire," it said. "You will listen and obey. Your species has built colonies in space that belongs to us. You will leave these worlds immediately. You will also give us all your ships and technology. If you do this, we will let your people live as our servants. If you refuse, we will destroy you all." The message ended. The bridge was quiet for a moment. Some of the younger crew members looked scared. Others looked angry. Quan just looked tired. "How many ships do they have?" he asked Lee. "Our scouts say about 2,000 ships, sir, big ones. They've been moving through space for the last 6 months, taking over everything in their path. No one has been able to stop them." Quan nodded. 2,000 ships was a lot. Humans had maybe 300 ships total, and most of those were cargo ships or small patrol boats. The math was not good. "What do we know about their other conquests?" Quan asked. Lee looked at her datapad again. "They move fast, sir. Most species surrender after they see the size of the Vorthak fleet. The few that tried to fight were destroyed in days. The Zephyrians had a decent navy, but they gave up after the Vorthak destroyed their homeworld's moon." Dr. Park Min-soo, the ship's science officer, stepped forward. He had been studying alien behavior for years. "Admiral, I've been reading about their past conquests. The Vorthak seem to believe that showing overwhelming force will make enemies surrender quickly. It's worked for them for 800 years. And they think it will work on us," Quan said. It was not a question. "Yes, sir. They probably expect us to surrender within a few days." Quan was quiet for a long time. He thought about his daughter back on Earth. She was only 10 years old. He thought about the human colonies, full of families who had worked hard to build new lives among the stars. He thought about all the things humans had learned since they left Earth, all the mistakes they had made, all the wars they had fought and won. "Sir?" Lee asked. "What are your orders?" Quan turned back to the window. In the distance, he could see the lights of New Busan, one of the newest human colonies. 50,000 people lived there. They had farms and schools and parks. Children played in the streets. It was a good place. "Send a message to all human worlds," Quan said. "Tell them to start evacuation procedures. Get the people to safe places. Then activate Protocol 7. Lee's eyes went wide. Protocol 7 was something they had hoped never to use. It meant war. Total war. "Sir, are you sure? Maybe we could negotiate." "Captain Lee," Quan said, and his voice was very calm. "How many wars has humanity fought in our history? I don't know the exact number, sir. Hundreds, maybe thousands. Big wars, small wars, civil wars, world wars. Do you know how many of those wars ended with humanity accepting defeat?" Lee thought about it. She knew human history pretty well. "None, sir. That's right, none. We don't surrender. We don't give up. We finish what others start." Quan turned to face his crew. "Send another message to the Vorthak. Tell them they wanted a war. Now they have one." 3 hours later, the Vorthak fleet arrived at New Busan. Just like Quan had ordered, the colony was empty. The people were gone. But the Vorthak didn't know that. They sent a landing force to the planet and found nobody. Overlord Thextar was angry. He had expected to find humans begging for mercy. Instead, he found empty buildings and silence. Then the bombs started going off. The humans had turned the entire colony into a trap. Every building was rigged to explode. The power plant went up first, then the spaceport, then the residential areas. The Vorthak troops on the ground ran for their ships, but more explosions followed them. Dextar watched from his flagship as his soldiers fled the burning planet. He had lost 300 troops and gained nothing. This was not how conquests were supposed to work. Destroy the planet, he ordered. Burn everything. Show these humans what happens when they defy the Empire. The Vorthak ships opened fire. They turned New Busan into ash and rock. They broadcast the destruction to every human world, expecting to see surrender messages start coming in. Instead, something else happened. Every human world went dark. No more radio signals. No more trade ships. No more diplomatic messages. It was like humanity had just vanished. But Dr. Park Min-soo, watching from a hidden ship nearby, knew better. Humanity hadn't vanished. They had just stopped playing nice. The real war was about to begin. On Earth, in the deep bunkers where human leaders made the hardest decisions, emergency meetings were starting. Old plans were being pulled from secret files. Factories were being converted. The entire human civilization was turning itself into a weapon. Admiral Kwan received his new orders 6 hours after New Busan burned. He read them twice to make sure he understood. Then he looked out at the stars again, but this time he was not thinking about their beauty. He was thinking about how to use them as weapons. The Vorthak Empire had ruled space for 800 years. They had conquered dozens of species. They had never lost a war, but they had never fought humans before. And humans didn't just fight wars, they finished them. 3 months had passed since the Vorthak Empire destroyed New Busan. Overlord Thextar expected the human surrender message to arrive any day now. Instead, he got reports that made no sense. The Vorthak had taken 5 more human colonies without much trouble. The humans seemed to run away before the Empire's ships arrived. But something strange was happening. Every victory felt empty. Every conquered world was a trap. General Kim Hyun-woo crouched in the ruins of what used to be New Incheon's main city. Around him, his soldiers waited in hidden positions. They had been underground for 2 weeks, watching the Vorthak troops try to figure out how to run a human colony. The aliens were not very good at it. They understood big space battles, but they did not understand humans. They set up their command post in the old city hall just like Kim knew they would. They put their supply depot in the old shopping center. They even tried to use the human transportation system. Kim smiled. Everything was going according to plan. "Commander Yoon, are you ready?" He spoke into his radio. High above the planet, Commander Yoon So-jin sat in the cockpit of her fighter ship. Around her, 20 other human pilots waited for the signal. Their ships were small and fast, built for hit-and-run attacks. The Vorthak had bigger ships, but big ships were slow ships. "Ready, General," Yoon replied. "We have visual on their supply convoy." The Vorthak supply ships were moving between planets like they owned the space. And maybe they did own it for now. But ownership could change quickly in war. "Begin the attack," Kim ordered. Yoon's fighters came out of nowhere. They had been hiding behind asteroids and space junk, waiting for the perfect moment. The Vorthak convoy never saw them coming. The human ships moved like angry wasps. They hit the big alien ships with everything they had, then ran away before the Vorthak could fight back. But some of Yoon's pilots did not run away. When their ships were too damaged to escape, they turned around and flew straight into the enemy ships. The Vorthak had never seen anything like it. In their 800 years of conquest, no species had ever used kamikaze attacks. It was insane. It was wasteful. It was terrifying. 3 Vorthak supply ships exploded. 2 more were badly damaged. The convoy that was supposed to feed an entire invasion force was gone. On the planet below, Kim heard the explosions in space and smiled again. Now came his part. The Vorthak troops in the city thought they were safe. They had won the planet after all. The humans had run away like cowards, but then the city started to fight back. Explosions came from everywhere. The power grid failed. The water system stopped working. Roads collapsed. Buildings fell down. It was like the city itself was alive and angry. Kim's soldiers appeared from sewers and basements and rooftops. They had been living in the city's underground tunnels for weeks, waiting for this moment. They knew every street, every building, every hiding place. The Vorthak knew nothing. The battle lasted 3 days. When it was over, Kim had captured 2,000 Vorthak soldiers and destroyed their entire occupation force. The aliens who survived were shocked. This was not how war was supposed to work. Back on the Vorthak flagship, Thextar stared at the reports from the ground. His troops had taken the planet easily, but now they were prisoners. His supply fleet was destroyed, and somehow the humans had made it all look simple. How is this possible? He demanded from his officers. We have bigger ships. We have more soldiers. We should be winning. War Prime Kexful, his chief strategist, looked worried. Sir, I have been studying the human attacks. They are not fighting like other species. They are not trying to win battles. They are trying to destroy our ability to fight. What do you mean? Look at their targets, sir. They attack our supply ships, not our warships. They destroy our communication centers, not our weapons. They capture our soldiers instead of killing them, which means we have to feed and guard prisoners. Every attack makes us weaker, not just in that battle, but in the whole war. Thextar thought about this. The Vorthak way of war was simple. Show up with more ships than the enemy, destroy their main fleet, and accept their surrender. It had worked for 8 centuries. Maybe they are just lucky, Thextar said, or desperate. On Earth, in a deep underground command center, Admiral Quan Deho was not feeling lucky or desperate. He was feeling focused. The walls around him were covered with star maps and battle plans. Every human military leader was working together now, sharing information and resources. Captain Lee Boram brought him the latest reports. Sir, General Kim has taken New Incheon back. Commander Yoon's squadron destroyed another supply convoy, and Technician Choi's new weapons are ready for testing. Quan nodded. Technician Choi Jae-sung was a genius with machines. Give him a Vorthak weapon and he could build a better one in half the time. Give him a captured Vorthak ship and he could figure out how to sink a dozen more. What about the prisoner exchange? Quan asked. Dr. Park is ready, sir. The Vorthak want their soldiers back. They are willing to trade. Dr. Park Minsu had volunteered for a dangerous mission. He would go to the Vorthak as part of a prisoner exchange, but his real job was to study them up close. He wanted to understand how they thought, how they made decisions, how they could be defeated. The exchange took place on a neutral space station. Dr. Park walked across the docking bay with his hands up, showing he was not armed. Behind him, a group of Vorthak prisoners walked toward their own ships. Overlord Thextar was there in person. He wanted to see what humans looked like up close. Dr. Park was smaller than he expected, and he did not look dangerous at all. You are Dr. Park? Thextar asked. Yes, and you must be Overlord Thextar. I have heard a lot about you. Your people are fools, Thextar said. You cannot win this war. We have conquered dozens of species. We always win. Dr. Park looked at him with sad eyes. That is exactly the problem. You think this is a war like all your other wars. You think we will give up when you hurt us enough. You think we fight for territory or resources or pride. Do you not? No, Dr. Park said quietly. We fight for survival, and humans will do anything to survive. Anything at all, Thextar laughed. Brave words from a species that runs away from every battle. We do not run away. We prepare. Every human colony you have taken, every battle you think you have won, it is all preparation for what comes next. And what comes next? Dr. Park looked out the window at the stars. Somewhere out there, human factories were working day and night, building new ships and weapons. Somewhere out there, human children were learning to fight. Somewhere out there, the entire human species was becoming something new and terrible. Phase 2, Dr. Park said. The prisoner exchange finished without problems. Dr. Park went with the Vorthak, and their soldiers returned to their ships. But as Thextar's ship flew away, he could not stop thinking about the humans' words. What was Phase 2? In the weeks that followed, the Vorthak started to find out. Human attacks became more frequent and more deadly. Their supply lines were constantly under attack. Their communication networks were being hacked. And somehow the humans seemed to know exactly where Vorthak ships would be before they got there. War Prime Kexful brought more bad news to Thextar every day. Sir, we have lost another supply depot. The humans hit it with some kind of new weapon that melts metal. How many ships did we lose? 12, sir. But that is not the worst part. The humans broadcast the attack to all the other species in this part of space. They want everyone to see that the Vorthak Empire can be beaten. Thextar felt something he had not felt in decades. Fear. Not fear of losing a battle, but fear of losing the war. For the first time in 800 years, the Vorthak Empire was fighting an enemy that got stronger as the fighting continued. And somewhere in human space, Admiral Quan was reading reports that made him smile. Phase 2 was working perfectly. Now it was time to start planning Phase 3. 6 months into the war, Dr. Lim Haiwan worked in a laboratory deep inside an asteroid. Around her, dozens of human scientists studied captured Vorthak technology. They had been working without sleep for weeks, driven by something that scared even them. The entire human species had changed. Every person, from the youngest child to the oldest adult, was now part of the war effort. Factories that used to make cars now made weapons. Schools that used to teach history now taught military tactics. Even artists and musicians were creating propaganda to keep people motivated. Dr. Lim held up a small device that glowed with green light. It looked harmless, but she knew it could kill a Vorthak soldier in seconds. The weapon targeted their specific biology, attacking their nervous system in ways that would not hurt humans at all. "How many can we make?" asked Captain Nam Tae-hyun. He commanded a special forces unit that operated deep behind enemy lines. His job was to deliver Dr. Lim's weapons where they would do the most damage. 1,000 per day, once we get full production started, Dr. Lim replied. "But Captain, are you sure about this? These weapons they are very cruel." Nam's face was hard as stone. "The Vorthak burned New Busan. They killed 50,000 civilians just to make a point. Cruelty is not something we need to worry about anymore." This was the new humanity. The old humans, the ones who worried about being fair and moral, were still there. But they had been pushed down by something darker and more focused. Humans had always been good at war, but now they were perfect at it. On the bridge of his flagship, Admiral Kwon Dae-ho studied reports from across human space. Every world was working at maximum capacity. Old people were building ammunition. Children were growing food. Scientists were creating weapons that should not exist. "Sir," Captain Lee Bo-ram said, "we are receiving reports from Captain Nam's latest mission." The main screen showed a video feed from Nam's helmet camera. He was standing in what used to be a Vorthak command center. Bodies lay everywhere. The green glow of Dr. Lim's weapons had done its work. "Mission successful," Nam reported. "We captured their communication codes and destroyed their fleet coordination center. Also, we found something interesting." Nam's camera turned to show a group of Vorthak prisoners. They were not soldiers. They were civilians, scientists, engineers, maybe even children. They looked terrified. "What are your orders, sir?" Nam asked. Quan was quiet for a long moment. The old humanity would have protected those civilians, treated them well, maybe even sent them home. But the old humanity was not fighting for its survival. "Follow Protocol 9, Quan said finally. Protocol 9 meant that all enemy personnel, military or civilian, were to be treated as potential threats. They would be imprisoned, questioned, and studied. Some would never see their homes again. Captain Lee looked uncomfortable. "Sir, some of those prisoners look very young." "The Vorthak did not care about our young when they destroyed New Busan," Quan replied. "We cannot afford to care about theirs." Far away in the deepest part of Vorthak space, War Prime Kexville was beginning to understand what humanity really was. He had spent months studying human history, reading their books, watching their movies, learning their languages. What he found terrified him. Humans were not just another alien species. They were something much worse. Every other species the Vorthak had conquered fought wars to defend territory or resources or pride. Humans fought wars to eliminate threats. Kexville brought his findings to Emperor Velthok, the supreme ruler of the Vorthak Empire. The emperor was old and wise, and he had seen many wars. But when Kexville showed him the human history files, even the emperor looked afraid. "They have fought over 4,000 wars in their recorded history," Kexville explained. "Large wars, small wars, civil wars, world wars. And every single war ended the same way." "How?" the emperor asked. "Total victory or total destruction. Humans do not accept partial wins. They do not negotiate when they are losing. They do not surrender when they are outnumbered. They fight until either they win completely or they are all dead." The emperor studied the files. He saw the ancient human wars where they fought with sticks and stones. He saw their medieval wars where they fought with swords and arrows. He saw their modern wars where they fought with guns and bombs. In every case, the pattern was the same. "What about their civil war?" the emperor asked. "Surely when humans fight other humans, they show mercy?" Kexville pulled up another file. "Their American Civil War lasted 4 years. By the end, One side had completely destroyed the other's ability to fight. They burned entire cities. They destroyed farms and factories. They made sure their enemies could never fight again. And their world wars? Even worse. In their Second World War, they fought on every continent. They used weapons that could destroy entire cities in seconds. They did not stop until their enemies surrendered unconditionally and accepted complete defeat. The Emperor was beginning to understand. So when we attacked them, we activated something that cannot be stopped. Human Total War Protocol is not just a military strategy. It is a biological response. When humans are threatened with extinction, their entire species becomes a weapon. As if to prove his point, reports started coming in from the front lines. Human attacks were getting more frequent and more effective. They had new weapons, new ships, new tactics. It was like fighting an enemy that grew stronger every day. Captain Nam's special forces were now operating in the heart of Vorthak territory. They struck at supply depots, communication centers, and civilian infrastructure. They took no prisoners among the military, but they captured every scientist and engineer they could find. The captured Vorthak were taken to secret human facilities where they were questioned about their technology and their empire's weaknesses. Some of them tried to resist, but humans had become very good at getting information from unwilling sources. Dr. Park Min-soo, who was still with the Vorthak as part of the prisoner exchange, sent secret reports back to human command. The Vorthak leadership was starting to panic. They had never faced an enemy like this. "They keep asking me when we will surrender," Dr. Park reported in a coded message. "They cannot understand why we have not given up yet. I think they are beginning to realize that we never will." The truth was starting to sink in across the Vorthak Empire. This was not a normal war. Normal wars ended when one side decided the cost was too high. But humans did not calculate cost the same way other species did. To humans, the cost of losing was extinction. And extinction was not acceptable, no matter what the price of avoiding it might be. Admiral Kwan received new intelligence reports every day. Human spy networks had spread throughout Vorthak space. Human weapons were being smuggled to other species that the Vorthak had conquered. Human propaganda was being broadcast on every communication channel. But the most important report came from the deep space monitoring stations. Long-range sensors showed that the Vorthak were pulling ships back from other parts of their empire. They were concentrating their forces for a massive counterstrike. "They are scared," Captain Lee observed. "They are pulling everything they have to fight us." "Good," Kwan replied. "When they concentrate their forces, they make themselves a bigger target. And we have something special planned for big targets." Dr. Lim's laboratory had been working on more than just small weapons. They had been studying the Vorthak home system, learning about their planet and their biology. What they had discovered would change the war forever. The Vorthak homeworld was beautiful, with blue oceans and green continents. Billions of Vorthak lived there in great cities that reached toward the sky. It was the heart of their empire, the center of their civilization. It was also their greatest weakness. Captain Nam received new orders that made even him hesitate. He was to take his special forces deep into Vorthak territory, past all their defenses to their home system itself. His mission was not to attack the planet. His mission was to prepare it for something much worse. "Sir," Nam said to Admiral Kwan, "are you sure about this? What we are planning? It will change everything." Kwan looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, the Vorthak were gathering the largest fleet in their history. They thought they could crush humanity with one massive blow. They still did not understand what they were fighting. "Captain Nam, how long do you think it will take the Vorthak to reach Earth once they start their final attack?" Nam checked his calculations. 6 months, sir." "And how long will it take you to reach their home system?" 3 months, sir. Then you have your answer. The Vorthak want to finish this war quickly, so do we, but we are going to finish it our way." Nam saluted and left to prepare his mission. As his ship disappeared into hyperspace, heading toward the heart of the Vorthak Empire, Admiral Kwan began the final phase of humanity's war plan. The Vorthak thought they were fighting for conquest, but humans were fighting for survival, and there was no limit to what humans would do to survive. 1 year after the war began, President Shin Yun-kyung stood in the Situation Room deep beneath Earth's surface. Around her, the leaders of humanity made decisions that would echo through history. The walls were covered with screens showing battles across the galaxy. Every screen told the same story. Humans were winning. But winning was not enough anymore. Winning meant the Vorthak might come back in 10 years or 50 years or 100 years. The human leadership had decided that was not acceptable. Admiral Kwan, what is the status of Operation Endgame? President Shin asked. Admiral Kwan looked tired. The war had aged him years in just months. Captain Nam's team reached the Vorthak home system 3 days ago. They have confirmed that our plan will work. But Madam President, I must ask one more time. Are you certain we want to do this? President Shin looked around the room at the other leaders. They all knew what Operation Endgame meant. It was not just about winning the war. It was about making sure there could never be another war. The Vorthak made their choice when they attacked us, she said. They wanted to see what humans do when threatened with extinction. Now they will learn. Colonel Bae Dong-hyun sat in a corner of the room writing in his journal. His job was to record everything that happened during the war, so that future generations would understand why these decisions were made. His journal was full of terrible things. He wrote, Day 365 of the war. Today we became something our ancestors would not recognize. We abandoned mercy for survival. We chose to become monsters so that our children could remain human. History will judge us, but only if there is history to write. Far away, Fleet Admiral Park Sang-woo commanded the largest human fleet ever assembled. 300 ships, including captured and converted Vorthak vessels, moved through space toward the Vorthak home system. It was humanity's entire military strength focused on one target. The Vorthak were waiting for them. Emperor Velthok had gathered every ship in his empire for this final battle. 2,000 Vorthak vessels surrounded their homeworld, ready to defend it to the last ship, but they did not understand what they were really defending against. Captain Nam Tae-hyun floated in the darkness of space, wearing a stealth suit that made him invisible to Vorthak sensors. Around him, his Special Forces team worked quietly on the surface of a small moon that orbited the Vorthak homeworld. They were not planting bombs or weapons. They were planting something much more sophisticated, devices that Dr. Lim had designed specifically for this moment. The devices would not destroy the planet. They would do something far more permanent. Team leader to base Nam whispered into his radio. The packages are in place, awaiting final authorization. Back on Earth, President Shin received the message. She looked one more time at the screens showing the approaching Vorthak fleet. They were 6 hours away from Earth's outer defenses. In 6 hours, they would begin the bombardment of humanity's home world. Admiral Kwan, send the authorization code, she ordered. Admiral Kwan entered the code that would activate Operation Endgame. Across human space, similar codes were being entered. Every human military unit received the same message. Final protocol is now active. Complete the mission. In the Vorthak home system, Emperor Velthok watched his fleet prepare for battle. He was confident that this massive force would crush the humans once and for all. Even if the humans fought well, they could not possibly defeat 2,000 ships. Then the human fleet arrived and everything changed. Fleet Admiral Park's ships did not attack the Vorthak fleet. Instead, they spread out around the entire system, taking positions that made no tactical sense. Some ships moved toward the outer planets. Others headed for the asteroid belt. A few even flew toward the system's star. What are they doing? Demanded War Prime Kexville. Why are they not attacking our fleet? Emperor Velthok watched the strange human movements with growing unease. Send them a message. Offer them one last chance to surrender. The message was sent, but the human response was not what the Emperor expected. Fleet Admiral Park appeared on the screen, and his eyes were cold as space itself. Emperor Velthok, Park said. You wanted to test humanity's resolve. The test is over. You failed. You are outnumbered 10 to 1, the Emperor replied. Surrender now, and we will allow your species to live as our servants. Park smiled, but there was no humor in it. Your species has spent 800 years conquering others. You have destroyed civilizations and enslaved entire worlds. You thought you could do the same to us. We can still do the same to you. No, Park said quietly. You cannot. Because you made one crucial mistake. You assumed we were like the other species you conquered. You assumed we would fight for territory, or resources or pride. But we do not fight for any of those things. Then what do you fight for? Survival. And to ensure our survival, we must ensure that you can never threaten us again. Ever. The transmission ended. Emperor Velthok stared at the blank screen, trying to understand what the human had meant. Then Captain Nam's devices activated. The effect was not immediately visible. But deep beneath the surface of the Vorthak homeworld, something fundamental began to change. The planet's magnetic field started to fluctuate. Its atmosphere began to shift. Its gravity began to weaken. Dr. Lim's devices were not weapons in any traditional sense. They were terraforming tools, designed to slowly but permanently alter a planet's environment. Over the course of several months, they would make the Vorthak homeworld uninhabitable for Vorthak biology, while making it perfect for human colonization. The Vorthak would not die quickly. They would have time to evacuate their planet if they chose to, but their home, the center of their empire, would belong to humanity forever. Emperor Velthok realized what was happening when his scientists detected the atmospheric changes. His homeworld, the planet where his species had evolved, where their greatest city stood, where billions of his people lived, was being slowly murdered. "Stop this," he broadcast to the human fleet. "We surrender. We will give you anything you want." Fleet Admiral Park's response was broadcast not just to the Vorthak fleet, but to every inhabited world in the galaxy. Every species that had ever heard of the mighty Vorthak Empire heard his words. "Surrender is no longer an option," Park said. "You started this war believing that superior numbers would give you quick victory. You believed that we would surrender when faced with overwhelming force. You believed that we were like every other species you had conquered." He paused, letting his words sink in across the galaxy. "You were wrong about everything. Humans do not surrender. Humans do not accept defeat. Humans do not fight wars to win territory or resources. Humans fight wars to eliminate threats permanently." The screens around President Shin showed alien news broadcasts from across the galaxy. Every species was watching what humanity did to the Vorthak Empire. They were learning what happened when you threatened human survival. "What will happen to the Vorthak people?" asked Colonel Bay. President Shin watched as Vorthak evacuation ships began fleeing their dying homeworld. "They will live. But they will live under human supervision on worlds we choose for them, following rules we create. Their empire ends today. Their ability to threaten anyone else ends today. And if other species object to what we have done?" President Shin looked at the screen showing alien reactions. Most were expressions of shock and fear. A few showed anger. But many showed something else, relief. The Vorthak Empire had been a threat to everyone, not just humans. "Let them object," she said. "But let them also remember what they have seen here. Humanity does not start wars. But when wars are forced upon us, we finish them. Completely." In space around the Vorthak homeworld, Fleet Admiral Park watched as the planet's cities went dark one by one. The Vorthak were evacuating their people, loading them onto ships that would take them to temporary refugee camps on distant worlds. But those camps would not be temporary. They would become permanent settlements, carefully monitored by human administrators. The Vorthak would survive as a species, but they would never again be a threat to anyone. Captain Nam's team finished their work and returned to their ships. As they flew away from the dying world, Nam looked back one last time. He felt no satisfaction in what they had accomplished. But he felt no regret either. The job was done. The threat was eliminated. Humanity was safe, and every other species in the galaxy now knew exactly what humanity was capable of when threatened. The war was over. But the peace that followed would be very different from any peace the galaxy had ever known. It would be a peace enforced by the species that had just proven they would do absolutely anything to survive. A peace enforced by humans. 2 years after the war ended, Governor Han Ye-jin walked through the streets of what used to be the Vorthak capital city. The buildings were still standing, but everything else had changed. The air was different now, easier for humans to breathe. The gravity was lighter. Even the color of the sky had shifted from purple to blue. The terraforming was almost complete. Soon, this world would be indistinguishable from Earth, except for the architecture that reminded everyone what used to be here. A group of young Vorthak walked past her, heading to their morning classes. They wore human-style clothes and spoke human languages. They had been children when their world was taken from them, and now they were teenagers who had never known any life except under human rule. Han watched them with mixed feelings. They seemed happy enough, but she wondered what they really thought about their situation. Did they remember their old world? Did they miss it? Or had they adapted so completely to human civilization that they considered themselves human now, Dr. Jung Kite approached her with his daily report. As the chief xenopsychologist for the Vorthak territories, his job was to monitor the psychological adjustment of the former Empire's citizens. "How are they doing?" Han asked. "Better than expected," Jung replied. "The younger generation has adapted completely. They think of themselves as human citizens who happen to be Vorthak. The older generation is more resistant, but they are not causing problems." "Any signs of organized resistance?" "None. The complete destruction of their military and government structures broke their will to resist. They understand that cooperation is their only option for survival." Han nodded. It was working, but it felt strange. The Vorthak had been a proud, powerful species for 8 centuries. Now they were essentially children under human care, dependent on their former enemies for everything. But that had been the point. Complete victory meant complete control. Ambassador Nextal of the Galactic Council waited in Han's office. He was a tall, thin alien with silver skin and large eyes that showed his emotions clearly. Right now, those eyes showed worry. "Governor Han," he said as she entered, "I bring greetings from the Council and a request for information." "What does the Council want to know?" Han asked, though she already suspected the answer. "They want to understand human intentions. Your species has demonstrated capabilities that frankly terrify the other galactic civilizations. The Council needs to know what humanity plans to do next." Han sat down across from him. Through the window she could see human and Vorthak children playing together in a park that used to be a monument to Vorthak military victories. It was a powerful symbol of how completely things had changed. "What do you think we plan to do?" she asked. "That is what worries the Council. No one knows. Humanity has shown that you can destroy an entire galactic empire without actually destroying its people. You have shown that you can change the fundamental nature of worlds themselves. You have shown that when threatened you will go to any lengths necessary to ensure your survival." Nextal leaned forward. "The question is, what do you consider a threat?" It was a fair question. In the past 2 years, 17 different alien civilizations had sent friendship treaties to Earth. Trade agreements were pouring in from species that had never even heard of humans before the war. Everyone wanted to be on humanity's good side, but Han could understand their fear. Humans had proven they were capable of things that other species considered impossible or unthinkable. They had turned an entire empire into a protectorate in less than 2 years. They had reshaped worlds to suit their needs. They had demonstrated a level of determination that scared everyone. "Ambassador," Han said, "let me ask you something. Before the war, had you ever heard of humanity?" "No. Your species was considered minor and insignificant." "And what did the Vorthak Empire represent to the galaxy?" Nextal was quiet for a moment. "Fear, oppression, the knowledge that any species could be conquered if the Vorthak decided they wanted your territory. So when the Vorthak threatened us, they were not just threatening humanity. They were threatening the principle that small species could exist independently. They were saying that might makes right, and that the strong can take whatever they want from the weak. I suppose that is true. Then understand this," Han continued. "Humanity did not destroy the Vorthak Empire for revenge or for territory or for resources. We destroyed it because it represented an existential threat not just to us but to every free species in the galaxy." She stood up and walked to the window. Below, a human teacher was showing Vorthak children how to play a human game. The children were laughing and having fun. It looked peaceful and normal. "We do not want to conquer the galaxy," Han said. "We want to protect it. The Vorthak way of thinking, that the strong should dominate the weak, is a cancer that destroys civilizations. We cut out that cancer by destroying their entire civilization, by transforming it. The Vorthak people still exist. Their children are growing up healthy and happy. But they are growing up with human values, cooperation instead of domination, protection instead of conquest." Nextal considered this. "And if another species threatens those values?" Han turned back to him, and her expression was as cold as Admiral Kwan's had been during the war. "Then they will learn what the Vorthak learned. Humanity does not fight wars. We finish them." Far away on Earth, Admiral Kwan Deho stood in the same command center where the war had been planned. But now, instead of battle maps, the wall showed peaceful scenes from across human space. Trade ships moving between worlds, scientific expeditions exploring new systems, families reuniting after the long years of war. Captain Lee Boram, now promoted to Admiral herself, brought him the daily reports. Most were routine, shipping schedules, diplomatic communications, scientific discoveries. But one report made them both stop and think, "Sir, we are receiving a message from the hegemony of Krath. They are demanding that we return the former Vorthak territories to independent rule." Quan looked at the message. The hegemony was a collection of militaristic species that had been allies of the Vorthak Empire. They had stayed out of the war, but apparently they did not like the results. "What is their fleet strength?" Quan asked. "About 800 ships, sir. Not as advanced as the Vorthak, but still significant." Quan thought about this. 800 ships was not a large threat to humanity anymore. The war had forced humans to develop new technologies and new tactics. The human fleet was now the most advanced in the galaxy. But more importantly, humanity was no longer fighting alone. "Admiral Lee, send a message to our allies. Ask the Zanari Federation, the Crystalline Collective, and the Independent Worlds Alliance if they would like to respond to the hegemony's demand." Lee smiled. "I think I know what their response will be." She was right. Within hours, messages poured in from dozens of species that had signed mutual defense treaties with humanity. The hegemony found itself facing not just the human fleet, but a coalition that included most of the galaxy's free civilizations. The hegemony decided not to press their demand. Back on the former Vorthak homeworld, now called New Sol, Ambassador Nextal prepared to leave. His visit had given him much to think about. He had come expecting to find a human empire built on conquest and fear. Instead, he found something much more complex. The humans had indeed conquered the Vorthak Empire, but they had done it in a way that no other species would have considered. They had not enslaved the Vorthak or killed them. They had transformed them into something new, a species that shared human values and human goals. It was terrifying in its completeness, but it was also strangely hopeful. As his ship lifted off from New Sol, Nextal looked down at the city below. Human and Vorthak citizens worked together in the streets. Children of both species played in the same parks. It looked like a successful integration, but he knew it was more than that. It was a demonstration. Humanity had shown the galaxy that they could do more than just destroy their enemies. They could remake them entirely. The message was clear. Cooperation with humanity led to prosperity and growth. Opposition led to complete transformation. Admiral Quan received one final report that day. It was from Dr. Park Min-soo, who was now studying the psychological effects of the war on human society. "Admiral, I wanted to give you my final assessment of what we have become," Dr. Park wrote. "The war changed us in ways that we are still discovering. We proved that when threatened with extinction, humanity will go to any lengths necessary to survive. But we also proved something else." "What is that?" Quan asked aloud, though he was just reading the report. "We proved that we can transform not just our enemies but ourselves. We became capable of total war when total war was necessary. But when the war ended, we became capable of total peace. We did not continue fighting because we enjoyed it. We stopped fighting because the threat was eliminated." Quan thought about this. It was true. The human war machine had been dismantled as quickly as it had been built. The factories that made weapons now made tools for building new worlds. The scientists who designed instruments of destruction now worked on medical, research, and environmental restoration. Humanity had proven they could become anything they needed to become. The galaxy will never again underestimate what humans are capable of. Dr. Park's report concluded. "Thanks for you."